We are now recording and we are now live.
Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, June 29th, 2022, and this is a special Board of Education Policy Committee meeting as we continue the policy audit. We will begin with proposed revisions to Board Policy Series 5000. We have been in the Series 5000, but today the policies we are looking at is 5240 hazing, 5260 use of reasonable physical force, 5350 immunization, 5610 gifts, and 5710 non-discrimination of students. Mrs. Sion.
Okay, so Shipman and Goodwin is suggesting that we repeal the policy on hazing since it's already covered in both the bullying prevention and safe school climate. At some point, hazing was a crime in K through 12 schools. It is not in Connecticut, now only secondary. And it's confusing to have two different complaint procedures. So we will include in the athletic handbook the duties of coaches to make the duties of the athletic director to make coaches and coaches to make students aware of prohibitions on hazing.
So will the changes to the handbook, will that be completed by when we repeal this policy?
As soon as you do, we'll let Chris Mayor-Fedonia know.
My only, just what I want to make perfectly clear to the public, we are not removing the idea that hazing is no longer an offense within our public school systems. It's just that the way the policies are set up, we now have two different grievance processes, and it really all belongs under one. So hazing is still considered wrong by the Board of Education. It is covered by our other policies. We just want to make the process when people have concerns and when the school, allows people to execute that process and go through the process, that everyone is on the same page with how to do it. So hazing is still wrong. The repeal of this policy should not be seen as anything different than procedural.
Use of physical force policy 5260. Shipman's also proposing that we repeal this policy. It's already covered by physical restraint and seclusion. It's the same statutory reference, so it's just duplicate.
And same caveats apply.
Yes, yes. Okay, policy 5350 immunizations. So we're suggesting to repeal and replace, and I'm just going to say that the revisions are so extensive that Shipman and Goodwin is recommending that we don't try to redline because it'll be too confusing and you won't be able to read the policy. But what we're going to do is purchase the software that Shipman has so that even though it's extensive, you'll be able to see a red line, but we'll still give you a clean copy because it's just impossible to read with all the changes that have gone through. So the immunizations, they have revised the policy to include that now if families can't afford to pay for the required immunizations that the town is required, the religious exemption has undergone numerous changes since we last updated this policy, and then there are legal references and stylistic changes as well.
And just an add, because I think sometimes immunizations can get to be interesting conversations. These are making sure we are in accordance with state laws. So any issues with state law can be taken up at that level, but this is making sure the district is in compliance with state law.
And I did confirm with Alicia Casucci that these are all requirements and that we are following the state requirements.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so the gift policy is not a state requirement. Shipman and Goodwin doesn't have a model policy, but acknowledges that many districts do. Ours, as you read, is general in nature. I guess the question is, do we want monetary limits? We do have the student activity manual, which does have a monetary limit included in it, $50 for coaches. The other districts run the gamut from New Canaan, which has from contractors and suppliers a limit of $50, from individuals to board members or employees, $50. Group gifts seem to conflict to me, but no group gift, no individual should be asked to contribute more than $20. Ridgefield has a limit of $25, and Greenwich is an outlier because they have a limit of $200 for any individual gift. So we can do whatever we want. It's, I think, a culture of the town sort of issue.
So Marge did so much research on this because I think it has come up so often. And when we got to this in the audit, really kudos to her from doing all the research on it. What I'll throw out there is I think that the student activities manual is a really good manual. A lot of hard work was done on it. I think the $50 gift limit is probably not being adhered to. It was originally recommended as part of an audit in the IRS. And so I would be looking for the board to consider setting some sort of individual limit. Because right now it's a group limit of $50. And I think that that's probably not being adhered to in my experience in talking to parents. But if we were to set an individual limit, that would get us closer to what's actually going on. And that would apply to teachers and coaches if it was in our policy. The board may not be willing to take up limits. And that's something, but I do think that the idea that one $50 gift is going to coaches is probably not what's actually happening. And to have a policy or a administrative procedure that isn't being followed, to me, begs for us to take a look at whether we either need to be stricter on the policy or we need to create something more workable. So I would throw out a number of saying, no more than $25 per individual, a gift to any individual in the school district per year, which allow, $25 to your teacher, $25 to your coach per giver. But
Can I ask, is it per gift or per giver? Because I don't know, in the elementary classrooms, for example, do they do a holiday gift and an end of year gift?
I think if we set a total for the year, that would be a good benchmark to me. I'm throwing out the number 25. It doesn't have to be 25. It could be 10, but I would like us aware that we are in a public school system. So to me, without judging any other districts, if you set a really high bar, you can set expectations. If you set a manageable bar, I like our language here that says that, we really encourage the idea of writing letters to staff members, expressing gratitude and appreciation. So I guess what I'm saying is we're somewhere in a happy medium I'd like to find. I think gifts are larger than $50. And I think that we know that. And so to still have it on paper and then try to hold a staff member accountable to it when they're getting a gift puts the staff member in a really tough position. I would much prefer to have some limits or guidelines.
I think the guidelines are what I think people are looking for, because we've all chaired PTOs in the CDSB, and this policy is one of the things that parents are looking for guidance on, and what is appropriate when they're doing the group gift at holiday time, when they're doing the group gift at the end of the year, what is an appropriate gift? And I think people have in the past have been looking for guidance on that. I think 25 per person annually, that seems low to me, especially I'm thinking elementary, if you're doing a holiday gift and a end of the year gift, 25 seems low to me total cumulatively, but that's my 2 cents.
Can I ask why this says fundraising activities also? Because I think that throws people off. The policy itself is titled gifts and fundraising activities. I think that's confusing.
So when we revise the policy, we will separate it because we do have a proposed policy that didn't make it in this packet for fundraising specifically.
Okay, so that would go away.
Yep.
Then. Okay.
Yeah.
I agree that I would like to have the conversation with the board about putting a number here. And I do tend to think 25 sounds reasonable, especially at the elementary level when you're talking about the group. Throwing it together. I think you can make it work. And I think it would be helpful to have a guideline. And I think we'll just have to see how people feel about it.
Okay. I will talk to the chair about how best to do that. And maybe it's a little bit of a conversation at the table. I guess my guiding principles in that conversation would be, and these are my suggestions so they can change, is that we recognize we are a public school, we recognize gifts are voluntary, and we want to make sure that we are not setting undue expectations on taxpayers above and beyond what they do to fund our schools. So, because I'm sure we all, like someone could say, well, I think $27.50 is the right, and I could say 25. So as long as we come up within a framework of what is reasonable, I would be willing to proceed. So I think for this one, Marge, we'll talk about having a broader discussion at the board.
So we won't make a recommendation. You don't want me to,
Well, I think our recommendation is to put a number in
To
here.
set a limit.
but not a number. Not an exact number, we won't. Okay, and also, just to also clarify, many of the policies in other districts prohibit cash gifts. It, and does that include a gift card? Some of them carve out examples of gift cards that can only be used at one store as opposed to an American Express gift card. I know that the finance department will not allow gift cards that come from student activity funds. So, but that might be something you want to consider as well.
Yeah, and I think for me, that's part of why I would like the limit within a very reasonable amount so that no one can claim that there is a gift that provides undue influence. And cash can sometimes be seen that way, but if it's done in some sort of number we can get to that says this shows appreciation, but is not inferring influence on anybody, or even creating the specter of, I'd be comfortable.
So the gift policies in other districts, which Shipman could help us with, actually say that
Okay.
there shouldn't be the appearance and the staff member shouldn't solicit. We will also be proposing an ethics policy for staff that says they shouldn't solicit and may not accept gifts except as in accordance with the gift policy. So it'll hold everyone accountable.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea, which means that we probably need to tighten this one up a little bit.
Okay.
Just to not create confusion, because I think to Sarah's point, for years, we've kind of had confusion of what does it mean? What does that mean? And it'd be nice if we could be clear. And I think we want to thank our teachers. I think a lot of parents feel that that's a nice way to do it. But we don't want what used to go from a plate of brownies to all of a sudden a vacation, right? So we have to start to put some expectations around it, I think.
Just wonder, Tara and members of the committee, whether when it says students and parents shall be discouraged, is that actually what we actually mean, or do you want to be neutral on it, or otherwise just that setting the scene seems to be an innocuous sort of task, but it's also important to say set the scene. So is that exactly what we would want to say?
So that word struck me too. And I don't think that we're discouraging people from acknowledging the hard work of our teachers and our coaches. So I don't know.
I mean, you can recognize from time to time that that's appropriate otherwise. But
Mrs. Best.
I left the page. I got to get back there.
I'll weigh in on that. I think that in a public school system, we are not encouraging that this is an expectation. I think it also says this policy is not intended to discourage acts of generosity. I do think, and it has been talked a lot about in town, that there can start to be a race, or I feel like I have to do it, or I feel like because, 10 other kids in the class did it, what if my kid doesn't do it? And I think we have to be very careful then about the wording, because sometimes by having a conversation, we can give the appearance that this is an expectation, and gifts are not an expectation at the end of the year or at any particular holiday. It is really what we are trying to do is set limits so that those gifts aren't seen as undue influence.
I'm just going to ask, having brought up that issue, Dr. Hadley, whatever, would you like me to go to Shipman and Goodwin with all of these? Like, should we use the word discourage? What should we do about gift cards? And then come back to this committee
Yes.
with a revised policy?
Let's
I
do
think
that.
That's better. Okay.
Rather than opening it up, I think we need a little more
That's a great
meat
idea.
around this
Yeah.
bone.
Okay, Immunizations Policy 5710. These are all legal requirements, and they've been quite extensive, and the legislature has made multiple changes to things such as the definition of a veteran, but it now prohibits discrimination on the basis of veteran status, alienship, or citizenship, if people need accommodations based on religious or other disabilities. Not that religion's a disability, religion or disabilities, that tells them people who to contact, gender identity, sexual orientation, and the regulations now provide if someone makes a complaint of discrimination against the superintendent, that it goes to the board chair.
Any questions?
So I did go back to Shipman and Goodwin, and they don't encourage a model policy, but they understand that many districts, and now more than ever, would like to have a civility policy. And so this is what they recommend. It has clear expectations and clear guidelines for the consequences of action that is not civil.
Any thoughts? Because I know we've talked about this a lot.
I think, and I've said this before, I think it's important that we have this, just so people can have it in their back pocket if need be. Hopefully people don't need it, but if they do, it's there.
What did you think about this particular draft? Because we've gone through a couple of them at this point. And that's an open question, not just putting Mrs. Parent on the spot. It's an open question.
My one, so when we say, the board administration requires students, board employees, and third parties, Board of Ed members are included in that. They're not, the, just below where it says expectations regarding civility.
Thank you.
Board of Ed members are not explicitly called out in here, but are they assumed as part of that?
So up in the purpose, it talks about third parties, meaning any individual present at school or school
Okay.
property, but it might send a message to include board members
members.
in
Yeah.
the language that you thought. I'll check
I
with
would put board
Shipman.
members.
Yeah.
Or what are their thoughts?
Yep.
Just so we're all in this together.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
The community,
No,
the
right,
students,
right.
the administration, every stakeholder has a piece in this.
I thought this draft was good. I thought it was comprehensive. I thought it was straightforward. I was not missing anything, and I agree. I think it's valuable. I like the idea of including this.
I liked it. I mean, I think we've looked at a lot of models. I think we looked at a lot of policies in other districts. We looked at our old, we've looked at getting rid of. This is the, what I've been most comfortable with so far.
Yep.
So with that addition, or with Shipman's thoughts on that addition, post that, I would be ready to move forward with this to the board.
I agree.
Any other questions? And Mrs. Stein and I will see what we can do. So we're going to keep trying and we will let everybody know in terms of policies moving forward. But we really want to try to get through this. We keep saying we'll do an audit. We feel like we have good momentum. Everyone's really done their homework, which I appreciate. We try to get these all ready. We had them ready last week. So we try to get them all ready for you to get them out and read through. But we will continue to maybe try to do that with even more lead time in the summer, given
Is there a scheduled meeting, next meeting?
there isn't. And
Okay.
part of that is we have to sync everyone's schedules. So we will TBD you on
Okay.
that.
Sounds
Are
good.
there any of these that have to move forward to the next board meeting?
I think all of them except for
Except
for
gifts.
gifts.
Yes, okay,
And
okay,
then
yeah.
depending on whether we can turn around Shipman's thoughts on civility, if they're
That's fine.
willing to add in board members.
That shouldn't be an issue.
Okay, then we'll get that one in. It
Okay,
would
good.
only be gifts that we would hold back for a little further discussion. With that, is there any other public comment?
Good morning. I am not sure if there's any in-person audience.
There's not.
None.
There are no raised hands at this time.
Great. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mrs. Best, Mrs. Parent, all in favor?